Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Cinemondo podcast, anime arc. Uh, we are talking about a very popular anime series called, what's it called?
It's called One Piece. One Piece, right there. And we are in the Arabasta saga or Arabasta arc.
We're episode. We're going to do 10 episode arcs. So we were doing all arcs, but this arc is so long that we decided to break it into 10 because it's just too much to remember and try and break down. So we're going to try and do shorter. And it's actually a suggestion from a few of our commenters. I thought was a good idea.
Yeah.
So we're going to try that. And we are starting episode 92 to 100 of 1,000 episodes. So we're getting there. We're almost done.
This is the Lawrence of Arabia of One Piece. It's a desert adventure. I mean, every arc has a different feel and look to it. You know, you've got like the jungle island with dinosaurs and giants.
Right. Yeah.
And you've got this, you know, different looks, all kinds of different art direction and production and set design. And this one is the sort of, it's weird because there's all the world's deserts kind of combined. Is sort of the Arabian style desert, but they also talk about certain kinds of cactuses that we have in, you know, like America, you know, like South American desert areas and things like that. And so it's kind of like an all-purpose desert.
Yeah, and it's also, I sense like how I'm always parched watching these episodes. I'm always thirsty. They're always hungry. So a lot of it is about getting food, you know. And it starts out they're fishing. They're just starving. They catch. They don't catch a fish. They catch, Mr. Two, who's this interesting character, who. His power is that he can just change his face. He can be anybody, you know, and he mimics everybody on the Going Merry.
Right.
And so that's sort of really sort of starts this whole story out, like where it goes from there. And so he's an interesting character.
Yeah. And that is, well, you made a good point though. Interesting that each arc kind of has its own theme. The thing that was kind of different about this one is that usually they have a new place and a new villain. And it's pretty tight and clean. This one has like multiple villains. It's really long and huge area that they're in, and still mostly all desert. They keep that kind of, you know, like I said, Arabian kind of feel to it. But it's like this one was super complex because you had more like warring factions. You have like leaders who were, you know, affecting the whole population. Like we didn't have the simple bad guys, but even some of the old bad guys kind of come back into it. So it's like it was kind of epic. And we're
the antagonist roster is overwhelming in this one. You've got the entire Marines, you've got the entire country of rebels, you know, the rebel force, and all
the Baroque works ships and stuff.
And the Baroque works, and it's
I think
all
Marines
like,
kind of appear for a second, like Marines again. I mean, it's like they were just put everything in here. Yeah, the smoker came in. That was like at the end of the live action, we had a little quick preview. It looked like the smoker was the new character they were teasing at the very end of the live action. So we got to see him, you know, do his thing. That was interesting. But we also found out something new about Luffy. He has a brother.
He has a brother.
It's like his brother's kind of cool though. He's kind of more sophisticated. He's older. He's got tattoos. He's kind of cool, you know.
But
whereas Luffy's kind of like out of control and crazy.
Funny. When he showed up, I was like, that's so much like a ripoff of Luffy's character. The way this guy is acting and eating and all that. And then it was like, oh, it's his brother. Okay.
And like he says, oh yeah, that's my brother. They're like, what? You didn't say you had a brother?
And his brother is super. I mean, he's got a really intense power. I mean, he's called Ace, the Fire Fist, right? Fire Fist. And so he can just kind of explode ships and armies with just one punch.
He's like a nuclear weapon. It's like, oh my god,
he's like the most powerful creature in the whole series so far. But he's, you know what he kind of reminds me of in another anime. Remember Speed Racer? Had a brother. You know, it was like, but it was like this mysterious, like Racer X, Speed Racer's brother, and. This guy is kind of like the mysterious, very cool brother that Luffy you can kind of tell that he sort of aspires to be like his brother kind of character.
Yeah.
He's one of those kind of brothers,
That's true. And we do end up, and this is kind of an overview of this arc. We're just going to talk about these first 8 episodes. They have a lot of people coming in with new dragon powers. So it's like dragon fruit powers, whereas normally we see like 1 or 2, maybe. Well, we got a bunch of new cool powers. I love hearing about the different powers because you're like, which power would I want? I don't know.
Right.
So we get, but right now we got Luffy's brother. So that's one of the new, and also some of the other villains. But I think one of my so when they land here, they start trying to get across the desert. That's after a few things in town and all that, and they're all starving and dying of thirst. And what I thought was so interesting, because we know we've already talked about how terrible they are to animals, which I get.
Right.
You gotta eat.
Yeah.
But
culture.
I love how Luffy kind of runs off.
He just runs off to eat.
He's screaming, I gotta eat. He's running. And they're just like, okay, whatever. So he comes upon a huge desert, and all these birds are dying, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, there.
Yeah.
So they're all like, oh, and he goes, we have to save these birds. I'm like, you gotta save them. I thought for sure. Why did he not want to eat them? Like I did. Yeah. So this episode was really strange because they're actually kind of nice to the animals in this for the most part, except for some giant lizards. But it's like, but it was weird to me because I'm like, how do they decide not to eat the birds? So anyway, he makes this huge mistake of like, we have to, and I was like, glad. I'm like, oh, Luffy has a conscience. He's trying to save the birds. Turns out it was all just a big trick, which I thought was hilarious. Right. So then the birds come and they steal everything. It's just funny. They're running away with all their stuff. They're like, we gotta catch them. It was so funny. So that was pretty cute.
Never trust animals.
Don't trust them. They're bad news.
There's not a lot of continuity with how they look at animals, and whether it's food or it's somebody you have to save or it's a friend, you kind of don't get it. Okay, go ahead.
I did notice something. Whenever they depict animals without pupils in their eyes, if the animals have white eyes, just like white,
they're gonna die.
That means they're food animals, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Like all the dinosaurs had just white. Remember, they just had white, empty eye socket, like white eyeballs.
Almost like they were possessed.
Yeah, or they don't have a soul. They don't have a
interesting.
They don't have a.
They're not a sentient being or whatever.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Well, there's a giant scorpion that kind of comes out of the sand, and they immediately think, okay, it's food. Like they called it like a land crab or something. Yeah,
it's like, oh, tasty.
Don't eat.
I like how Luffy finds it. He just sees a Sing Sing. Goes, what's this? He's like poking at it. It's like the big stinger. That was really funny. So they're out in the desert encountering lots of adventures like that, and I thought that was I enjoyed this part of the arc because I just like even though it was a little bit sad and they were hungry and thirsty all the time, I liked that they were in kind of a survival kind of, version of the show where they're out here just trying to survive in the desert. And that was kind of entertaining.
Right.
I liked that. And
they
was
discover
cute.
dance powder, which is like the sort of the oil.
The dance powder is huge.
The spice of the desert. A bit, it's funny. My wife and I watched this, and she was like, "This is so much like Dune." It has these things that go under the sand, and they come up out of the sand, and they have the people. They encounter these sort of desert pirates that have a ship that sails across the sand, which is so cool, and they sort of know the desert. They're sort of like the Fremen, and Luffy Luffy and the gang sort of befriend them and help them fix their ship that they broke. And the dance powder is sort of like the spice.
Very true. Very true.
Because
it brings rain. Yeah,
that's right. But but that's kind of interesting. In a way, there was sort of a climate change, and also it's like Dune, the spice, like where by using this, they've devastated the landscape. And everyone's dying from it. No one seems to care except the guys who are making the money. And so it's like that was interesting too, because you had this overarching humanitarian type storyline where we have to save the people who are being basically abused by taking away moisture, which they said it hasn't rained for 3 years or whatever they said. And I'm like, whoa. And then that's why everything's a desert. So then it used to be a desert. so one person, like oil companies and the people making dirty energy, they're basically controlling the world by destroying the world. So
the Harkonnens.
Very, very sad message in this one, kind of a subtext, I think.
And Princess Vivi is like the Paul Atreides, she's there's scenes in there later where she sort of, tells people things, and finally they hear your voice, and
I liked the running joke because I should have mentioned it before. I keep finding these terrible things. Oh, I meant to tell you there are these giant, so oh my God. That was a really funny gag.
I really about the scorpions. Yeah.
I didn't tell you about the whole thing with the
And the sand sleds were cool. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
They were going really fast and all that.
That was very cool.
Real cool action scene. There's some interesting flashbacks with Princess Vivi when she was a young child, and sort of what happened with her father, and how the city that was once just burgeoning, beautiful city, because of what happened, became sort of this, ruined wasteland.
Yeah.
And so the flashbacks are interesting because you get a real depth to that character and kind of understand why there are rebel warriors out there, and the epicness of it. It's not just one adventure to another. It's like this whole thing is much more sort of deep. So it just takes longer to tell that kind of a story.
And you meet Koza, who's a little boy, Koza, and he kind of represents that sort of disillusioned young person who it becomes a rebel, and you find out why. It's interesting that it's not always really super clean cut who's a good guy and who's a bad guy. I mean, it's fairly obvious when we're talking about the Baroque works and the super bad guys, but when you have the pirate, the Straw Hat Pirates are considered bad guys by the law enforcement Marines, who are supposedly good guys. I mean, they're fighting crime, and pirates are criminals, right? So Luffy is sort of that whole thing again that I've talked about a few times, is the whole idea that they want to be pirates is again sort of like a kid's idea of a pirate. It's not like they're going to go out and hurt and kill people and steal their money. They're playing pirate, and that's what I love about this, is it's got this innocence, childlike innocence. I'm going to be king of the pirates, and what does that mean? It means I'm going to go out and just sail my boat around. I mean, they don't hurt people, they help people. So they're not pirates.
Well, I like when they introduce people who present as bad guys, but then you start hearing their backstory and find that it's not as simple as that, and they end up kind of being like they're just trying to survive and get along like everyone else. And so there's always that you never know at first, like, oh no, am I supposed to hate this person?
Right.
And you find out later, no, there's a complicated reason why they're doing what they're doing, and they're not necessarily the bad guy. But we, this is just the first 8 episodes, so we're gonna do another episode as we go deeper into the desert, deeper into the conflict, deeper. More weird animals, more things happening. But overall, I think this was kind of a fun way in. I liked these first 8 episodes. I think ultimately, and this is like an overview, I feel like the arc was a little long, but as it started, I was enjoying it because I feel like, I liked the weird stuff with Sanji. It was funny where he's like a super horn dog in this arc for some reason. Would not
super
leave
horn
the women
dog
alone.
And there's a perverted camel that only let
Lash
Nomi sit on him. So
only women can ride this camel. I know, it's really funny. So we're introduced to Lash, the camel.
Eyelash.
I thought he seemed fine.
Well, he was running guns for the rebels. He worked for the rebels, and it was like every once in a while, again, like with Vivi, you know how Chopper can understand animal language, and it's like after all this stuff, there's a scene where the camel goes or something, and Chopper's like, oh yeah, he knows the rebels, and they're like, why didn't you all this time? Why didn't he say anything? It's like, oh, that's right. Cute. The rebels are here. They're in this place on the map.
And still I love how the
episodes. Yeah, Chopper's fun. I love that he can change really forms. And
I know I like the badass Chopper and then the normal cute little Doctor Chopper.
But even the badass monster Chopper still has the baby voice. He's like this big werewolf looking thing, and it's like, I'm tired.
He's really cute. So I'm loving this new character. I think Chopper's great.
Yeah, Chopper's.
So be sure and check out. We're going to do another. We're going to do probably 4 episodes for this arc.
Right. So we'll do another 10 episodes next time to get us halfway through the saga. Then
this is basically our intro to the saga. We didn't get too far yet. So. Be sure and check it out. Let us know what you think of the first 8 episodes of Arabasta.
Can you remember that far back if you're a One Piece fan?
Exactly. And be honest. It's like we're new at this, so I know we're kind of missing some of the context. Like some people say, you don't know this. I'm like, well, we're only this many episodes of 1,000, so you have a lot more knowledge and depth and understanding of the universe than we do. We're still babies in the One Piece world.
Just keeping the characters straight, honestly, it's like, it is a challenge, but it's incredibly creative and interesting. And every episode is like, where are we going? And sometimes some of the episodes can be felt like a little bit of a filler going on there, like this could have been, we could kind of get past this, but you go with it because it's part of the whole thing. And
the intro songs change. I don't. This is probably my least favorite intro song so far. I like the first one the best.
Me too.
Second one was okay. This one, not loving it. But but I like the musical cues are still there, like from the original. So I still like.
If you like that original one, hang on because there's a very, very moving moment coming up in this arc.
Good to know.
I have to confess, I've already
seen a little sneak peek.
I've seen a little bit ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit.
Okay.
All right. See you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.